Wonderful, warm welcome, everyone of our dearly beloved community. So beautiful to see you. So as you are arriving, I'm Des English from Cape Town in South Africa. Please write your name and where you are calling from in the chat so that we can get to know you a little bit from there. We know that there are people who have newly registered. Maybe it's your first time. Very, very warm welcome. If you are a repeat client, we're always happy to have you here. So in the chat, please put your name, where you're from. Yashina from Cape Town in South Africa, welcome. Clay Boykin from Austin, Texas. All Mentor from Cape Town. Mike in New York. Fabrizio from Italy. Eden from Seattle in US. Lucille from Cape Town. Ugo, Venezuelan, joining from New Jersey. Shana Fernandez, Mark Boven from Cape Town. Shana Fernandez from Cape Town. Oh, this is going quite fast. Sam from California. McDonald, Cape Town. Brian from Wisconsin. Argentina's in the house. Sue B on Whidbey Island, Pacific Northwest. Very warm welcome. Ticha Masai from Kenya. William Thompson. Juliana from Italy, welcome. Deborah from Seattle. Julian from Dallas, Texas. Indu Prakash Singh from Delhi in India, welcome. Dolly from FL, Florida. Janine from Cape Town. Jim from Vancouver. Welcome, everyone. And more people will join us. And so with our hearts together, as those who are still joining a little bit later, they're going to feel our very warm welcome as we get started in our session. So I want to invite us to just a few moments to just settle and breathe together for a few moments. So where you are sitting in your space, just take a gentle moment and close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. Or just gently soften or lower your gaze away from your device. And gently focus your attention on your breath and feel the life force, feel the breath moving in and out of your body. And with each in and out breath, feel your being becoming more present. Feel your body becoming more present where you are seated. And let's take a few moments to just breathe together in silence. If you would like to, I gently invite you to place your right hand over your heart and gently breathe in and out of your heart for a few moments, connecting with gratitude, compassion, appreciation, love, whatever comes up for you, to just hold right now. And as you're settling into the space, we want to greet you with the words of a peace song called Shalama Beta, which means peace be upon this place. And it can also mean peace be upon this time and peace be upon this people. May it be so. So when you feel ready, you can gently open your eyes and hold a soft smile. And just looking around the screen, gently, softly greeting people with your eyes. And I'm going to invite Earl, Mentor, Mercy Mwende, Mark Bovum, and Janine Peterson, our trainees, to join me in lighting our candles and speaking our intentions for healing.
This candle for the healing between men and women.
We light this candle for the healing between men and men.
Candle for the healing between women and women. We light this candle for the healing between all genders and all divisions in the human family.
And we light this candle for the healing of all beings and the earth. Welcome, everyone. Over to you, Will.
Thank you, Des. Thank you so much. And thank you, Earl and Mercy, Mark and Janine, for the beautiful opening ceremony. My name is William Keepin, and I am the co-founder of Gender Equity and Reconciliation International with my wife, Cynthia Bricks, and the wonderful team of facilitators we have. It's a great joy to be with you all today, and I'm very enthused that we're offering this panel on the divine masculine. I will shortly introduce the 8 men who will be joining me on this panel exploration, but I'd like to begin just by exploring the topic itself. We hear a lot about the divine feminine these days, which in my view represents a very profound awakening in our time on multiple levels. But what about the divine masculine? What is it? And how does it manifest in our lives? As men and really as human beings, this is a very rich and complex topic on multiple levels, ranging from the physical to the psychological to the archetypal level to spiritual levels and beyond. And fortunately, we have a panel of 9 voices, 8 plus my own, to really explore this, to give just an inkling of what this might all be about. So I'm going to just offer just a kind of very brief framing remarks and a bit of my own perspective, and then I will introduce the other 8 panelists to delve into this more deeply and broadly. From my perspective, when a man matures and finally grows up, which sadly does not always happen, what happens is he realizes his true life purpose, which is something greater than himself. And he commits himself to that purpose. And when that really takes root, which requires, real strength, resolve, and determination, this commitment from his human masculine side draws down or attracts or invokes something higher, which we could call the divine masculine. It also brings down the divine feminine to support the manifestation of his purpose. But we're sort of primarily focused here on the divine masculine today. And the divine masculine brings qualities such as power, determination, perseverance, commitment. And then the divine feminine brings qualities of compassion, discernment, humility, and love. And of course, these are not associated with the gender archetypes. So this is a broad generalization and simplification. But the bottom line, what happens as the man awakens and integrates these qualities and empowerments? He becomes a servant of the divine. But this is just the beginning, because the man still sees himself as separate from the divine, but in service to it. And then a further process of purification ensues in which the man is emptied of himself. And this usually entails a series of quite intense challenges, which dissolve and alchemize his whole sense of self and replaces it with a new one. And eventually, the man comes to realize that he himself is not the agent or the source of his service, but rather the sole agent is really the divine itself working through him. And this is the next crucial stage in which the man becomes identified as an instrument, an empty vessel of sorts, and the divine works through him. And this process applies whether the divine is conceived of in theistic terms, as in the Abrahamic religions and Hindu religion, or in non-theistic traditions, such as in Buddhism. The process is broadly similar, in which the man kind of goes through a purification process. And as this happens, over time, his heart is further purified and melted and alchemized, this whole process of alchemy, and he comes into developing a devotional relationship to the divine. Because ultimately, in the face of full divine majesty and glory, he can do no other. And as this process continues, his surrender to the divine becomes even deeper. And eventually, all distinction between the divine and the human dissolves completely. Even the sense of being an instrument is no longer there. And in this phase, the divine feminine and the divine masculine together merge in the man, and he transcends then all duality and enters into union with the absolute Godhead, or the Dharmakaya, or the Tao that is beyond the Tao. So there are different names for it across the traditions. So this is a simple outline of how I understand the divine masculine and its role in the life of a man and his spiritual development. So I'm going to now invite the other men to this call. I'm just going to give a short introduction of who's here with us. So we have John Guy from Seattle, who is a psychotherapist, a Jerry trainer. Jerry, by the way, is Gender Equity and Reconciliation International, and Jerry is the acronym that we use for this. And we just learned that in Creole, the language in Haiti, it means healing. So that's a wonderful discovery. In any case, John is a Jerry trainer and an ordained Vajrayana Buddhist Lama. He specializes in individual and couples counseling and group facilitation with sensitivity to intersectionalities of gender, race, and religion. And then we have Luke Rahm from Austria, who is a youth leader, activist, and educator dedicated to awakening humanity's sacred relationship with the earth. Luke also coordinates the World Peace Pilgrimage, and he co-founded the Diamond Field for Ethical AI. Then we have Garrett Evans, who is a trainer and international program officer for Gender Equity and Reconciliation International. Garrett has a strong background in Zen and other forms of meditation, in conflict resolution, and he's currently in graduate training in counseling psychology. And then Ticha Masai from Busia, Kenya, is an art educator, certified teacher, and spiritual leader, and Jerry facilitator and organizer. And Masai is founder of the Rema Center for Trauma Healing and Community Wellness. And then we have Sam Hinds, who's a scholar, writer, poet, psychotherapist, and devoted practitioner of meditative and imaginal practices. And Sam's primary focus combines integral philosophy, collective wisdom practices, and creative imagination. And then we have Fabrizio Paluzzi from Pescara, Italy. Fabrizio is an educator and Jerry facilitator. He's led 4 training projects for leadership and development of youth funded by the EU. And his earlier background was in opera and concert show business. And then we have Indu Prakash Singh from New Delhi, India, who's an award-winning activist for homeless people and for women's rights in India. And we first met him back in the late 90s when he came to present at the State of the World Forum on women's issues. Indu is also the author of 6 books on these topics and teaches at the university level on these subjects in New Delhi. And then Ignacio. So Ignacio Falcon is a lawyer from Argentina, and he is also a Jerry facilitator who has been working with us and recently just completed a workshop in Bogota, Colombia, a successful workshop from which Ignacio just returned. So I believe I've covered everyone. It's a very brief intro, so please forgive me. These are very rich men, but I think it's better to hear their ideas than their bios. And so I think without further ado, we'd like to go into really the first question that we are inviting each man to address. And that is this: how do you experience the divine masculine in your life? And if possible, please include a very brief example. And you each have 2 minutes to speak. And I would like to invite John Guy to go first, if you're willing, John.
Thanks, Will. You surprised me by choosing me first. How does the divine masculine show up in my life? I want to say that I think that the primary words that come to mind for me when I think of the divine masculine is the call to, I'm going to use the words tend, mend, and defend. To tend, mend, and defend life and order and good relations of all kinds. And I think that it shows up most, especially for me, in my relationship with spiritual practice, with the earth, and then with my fellow human beings, and that I'm trying to always make sure that I'm in good relations with all of these aspects of life. It shows up in my desire to be a good friend to all the people in my life, to support them emotionally and otherwise, to live what I believe in terms of my spiritual practice, and to tend to the earth. And in Houston, we did a workshop, a Jerry workshop, where we were called to circle around a tree and support the tree as men with our care. And I loved that because I feel like it's perfect image of tending, mending, and befriending our relationship as human beings with the earth, and supporting all those in our lives, family and friends and loved ones.
Thank you, John. That's beautiful. Appreciate that very much. I'd now like to invite Ignacio to please share your ideas.
Hi, everyone. Well, for me, the divine masculine shows up every day. It's not an idea. It's kind of a way of living. When I choose to listen before I speak, when I still stay calm in conflicts, instead of trying to win an argument, and when I use my strength to protect and not to dominate. When I take responsibility for my words, my actions, and when I bring it into the room, into a talk, into this meeting. I think also it's about balance, that I can be strong and sensitive at the time. Being a gay man kind of takes the best of both worlds, I guess, but all the kind of sensibility and being a listener. The other day when we were in Colombia, and I think this is a great opportunity, we were in front of a meeting about political influence of peasant women in Colombia, no? And I was just there sitting, listening at these beautiful women talking about their experiences working in farms and their animals and the way to involve into politics. And I was just there sitting in front of them, looking at them and just listening, no? Not being silent, but listening, no? Being with all your body and your spirit there, receiving all the information. And it was beautiful because many of them were looking, staring at me. It was plenty of women, I guess, and we were only a few men, and some were walking or talking or having some coffee, and I was sitting there looking at them with an open heart. And they started looking at me. I thought they needed kind of revalidation of something, because I looked at them, they looked at me and started talking, and I think that was the greatest example, no, of the divine masculine. Sitting and paying attention to what were the needs and what they wanted to share in that opportunity. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Ignacio. Thank you. So I'd like to invite Luke Ram, please.
Hari Om, everyone. When I know who I am you. And when I forget who I am, I serve you. This is a quote by Hanuman, very powerful figure in world mythology and Sanatana Dharma Hinduism. And this is really my relationship to this theme of today of sacred masculine. Because we use the word sacred nowadays a lot. It's like sacred washing. And the truth is, I have to humble myself. I have to learn how to be masculine before I even approach the sacred masculine. And this quote of Hanuman shares for us as humans, for me, with regards to the sacred masculine, that there is both this ability to be completely still and see whatever happens in this moment as the great perfection, to be so present without doing anything, like sitting on the mountain like Shiva or Buddha, to understand really what is here. And then to allow ourselves to go completely and totally into service with whoever is in front of us, to ensure that the conditions for life to flourish continue to be great and protect them. That's it for me.
Namaskar, Luke. Appreciate that very much. And now we'd like to invite Dr. Indu Prakash Singh, please. Welcome, Indu.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, jury members. I quickly want to just say here that it's a great opportunity to be here. And for me, I would say divine masculine is in sync with love, care, empathy, nurture, expansion, exploration, embedding peace in every grain of the world. Divine masculine is in consonance with the divine feminine, the Ardhanarishwar, Purna Ishwar in divine fem masculine. And in my work with the homeless, I would say, I have really seen that, how important it is to really work without ego. See the divine spark in even the poorest of the poor and trying to work with them, having abundance of humility, having a proclivity for ever learning and exploring your own self. So I've been guided, I would say, in my own meditation that I've done, where I have a phrase which I use normally, Will, that where I say normally that explore yourself and you'll find everyone in yourself. That's divine masculine. It is not a war with anyone in the world, for you're at peace with your own self. And since you're at peace with yourself, you are beyond fear, you're with the truth, and nothing can ever blow you over. Thank you.
I'm just so appreciating these reflections. So thank you so much, Indu. Namaskar, Indu. Okay, I'd like to now invite Ticha Masai, please.
Thank you, Will, and thank you everyone who is here. I really appreciate this moment and this opportunity to be able to share a few things about the divine masculine. I'm humbled to be here and to just be able to voice in what I have about the divine masculine. I will say that I am not a master in this, but I have a sense of how I live and how I live with other people. So my own understanding of myself, my inner self, my spiritual self, my soul in connection to the community, to the environment, and my purpose upon it, my qualities of the divine masculine. It is not a name, it is not a title for me, but it is a moment of serving and supporting. It is a moment of inspiring and graciously inviting. And this is most important to me, that the divine masculine is a quality that graciously invites the feminine to work hand in hand for the growth and for the betterment, not only for me, but for all mankind, for all earth, for all that dwells in it, and most specifically for the higher power, for the source that has sent me to serve. I'll say that.
Thank you so much, Masai. And now I'd like to invite Sam, please.
Thanks, Will and Cynthia and Jerry. It's a gift to be here in this international community and like really among this constellation of really extraordinary men. Wow. I suppose a place where I've encountered the divine masculine in humble ways in my life has been in kind of meditative practice, imaginal practice. It's just kind of shown up. And I think I've gained maybe a sliver of insight, hopefully, from that. But there's a lot of resonance with what's been said. Like I experience the divine masculine as kind of co-arising with his world. So often co-arising with the feminine that inspires his devotion, co-arising with family and beloved community that give his work meaning and purpose, and co-arising with place and land that he's grateful to inhabit and serve. And independent of that constellation, his virtues and his calling have no meaning. So he's very aware that he does not exist for his own sake. He exists for the sake of the whole. And there's generally a deeper sense of mystery that feels divine, that kind of is the source of the deep values that he tries to align himself with and place himself in service of, in loving service to the whole. That's how I've encountered it myself.
Thank you, Sam. That's beautiful. Yes, it is so rich to have these different perspectives. And now Fabrizio from Italy, please.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, everybody, for your sharing. Hi, everyone. Well, when I think about the divine masculine, and in a particular way, what about my divine masculine? I realize that for me, it emerges from the contemplation of the divine feminine, which, like a mirror, reflects the divine feminine that is in me, allowing my divine masculine to reveal and recognize itself. It is an awakening of both that carries the sacred masculine to unleash the potential of the sacred feminine in welcoming, respecting, and defending life in all its forms. In particular, I feel the strong resonance of the sacred masculine in the myth of the cosmogony of an ancient culture from Sardinia, an Italian island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. It tells of the myth of the mother goddess, the sacred feminine, who represents the universe as a dancing woman, called, between brackets, the dreaming absolute. She starts dancing because she feels something inside her that makes her move. It is her sun, the masculine principle of the cosmos, which represents movement and dynamism in the universe. His mother asks him, "Why do you want to be born?" And he replies, "It's time to create." "What?" she asks. "All your dreams." She then says to him, "And if I give you life, what will you give me in return?" "Mother, give birth to me, and I will give you a mirror." The mirror of the mother goddess is the entire universe. Her son is the son of the dreaming absolute, the god of dreams. In exchange for life, he forges all his mother's dreams into matter and gives life to everything in the universe. It is in this myth of creation that I feel strongly the relationship between mother goddess, hero man, sacred feminine, and the sacred masculine. I feel that force of my divine masculine, if not properly oriented, inspired towards the good, guided by divine feminine that illuminates the way, it can become the destructive and self-destructive masculine principle. It is only through the recognized the sacred feminine which illuminates the way of my divine masculine that I can commit to continually reactualizing my path to improve myself. So they are complementary for me. It is in their balance in myself that I can recognize the possibilities of the potential of my own divine masculine.
Grazie tanto, Fabrizio. Thank you so much. And now finally, I invite Garrett Evans to speak.
Thank you. I'll say I was quite struck by this idea that it's our kind of human, sincere aspiration for service or our purpose, that in some way meets and draws down this divine aspect, which supports and invites and challenges us, me, kind of beyond the limits of my small self. That's a very compelling articulation to me. And I'll also say that one of the places where I often feel what I sometimes call the masculine spirit or the genuine hearts of men is in the circles where men are invited to show up in a way that is so much outside of the cultural norms and rigid boxes of what masculinity is often thought of. And when they're invited to fully show up, it's almost like when those artificial barriers are let down and men move into their hearts, actually this other element of masculinity starts to shine through, that comes through in the honesty of each person's story, in their tears and in their courage, and all of that, openness of their human story. Something sacred, I think, starts to shine through, and I so feel it in those spaces. I sometimes sit there and just kind of in awe of what is coming through this circle of men. So I'll pause there for now.
Thank you, Garrett, and thank you all. It's truly inspiring to hear such a rich combination of men's perspectives from different cultures and across the age spectrum. So a deep gratitude to you all. Now what we're going to do, we're moving right along because this is a session where we're doing a lot in a short amount of time, but we want to give each of you a chance to speak a bit. So we're going to move into groups of 3 people each. And I just want to give you a little guidance for these groups. Let me give you the question, and then you will be automatically moved into those groups. So the question we want to invite you to reflect on: how do you cultivate the balance between masculine and feminine energies, and perhaps the masculine divine and feminine divine, in your own spiritual practice and in your own life? So just reflect on that question and feel free to share whatever feels appropriate in these groups that you'll now be moved into. How do you cultivate the balance between masculine and feminine energies in your spiritual practice and in your life? And we'll see you on the other side of these groups. So welcome back, everyone. Coming back now to the group, the invited group of 9 men, I'd like to maybe invite these men to be spotlighted. And I thought maybe we could have a dialogue among ourselves about this question that you've all been addressing. We've each had a chance to sort of share our perspective and a glimpse of our experience in relation to this question and to this theme. But I thought it'd be nice for us to be able to interact with each other a bit. And just hold this question: how do we, the same question we just addressed, how do we balance the masculine and feminine energies, and particularly the masculine and feminine divine, in our lives, in our spiritual practice. And if there's something that comes that feels important to add to that or go in a slightly different direction, please, as long as you're sticking to this theme of the divine masculine. And Luke, if you want to introduce your companion there, please feel free.
Of course. Yeah, this is Lydia. And we are doing a world peace pilgrimage with a Holon, with a group of amazing, inspiring young Jedis and change makers, peacemakers, students of life. We are right now in Italy. And this theme that we are addressing today is very much the core of our listening.
It sounds like you're breaking up just a little bit, Luke.
Yeah. One short beautiful synchronicity that I would like to share with all of us. We were thinking of going tonight to Milano, where the famous singer that many of you know, Sam Garrett, hold a unity concert. And I was praying to meet him, Sam Garrett, today. But the tickets were sold out and I wanted to really honor this space that we have here. And now the breakout session that I was in was with Sam and Garrett.
That's great. So you met Sam Garrett, you know, it was all intended, divine planned all along by the divine masculine. It just took a different form. What a lesson, because that's probably the deepest prayer of all. If we truly hold a deep prayer, it will be answered, but often not in the way we expect. That's beautiful. Okay, well, thanks for that. Yeah, so the space is open. Anyone, how do you work with that balancing and integration in your own life and your own practice?
I think I would say the intuition, maybe it's the feminine divine, and the direction and the focus is my masculine divine. No, when you can reach them together, we were talking about when I think when I meditate or when I'm in a prayer, I feel that the feminine energy, it's more, not the divine feminine, it's more open to receive, to hear, to explore. And the intuition, it might be for me the feminine energy, and doing, going, processing, and taking action, it might bring the masculine energy. And I think both together makes us who we are. It depends. It's like cooking. I'm a professional cook too. And when you start taking parts of this and a little bit of this, and that's the way we create a whatever we want to eat, or a person, no? It can't be one of them. It has to be both, and it depends on what do you want to cook, how much of each one are you taking. Fabrizio, what do you think?
Oh, my friend, I totally agree. Oh, yes, about how cultivate the balance from feminine and divine masculine and divine feminine. Yes, every time I don't get angry, angry, angry. Angry. And I think that that my divine masculine is talking with my divine feminine, and I have a very good vibration, because in the past, I was very angry man. I have a very I had a very anger inside me. So when I discovered that I could talk with my divine feminine, I began to feel some good vibration and to feel the peace inside me, and to feel the light, the spiritual light inside me, and to feel calm and peace. Yes, that's it. I it's I remember Nacho. I remember. I will remember what you did for.
I'd like to share.
Here, thank you, Fabrizio. I noticed that there was a hand raised from Jim Vallette, and I wondered if Jim, if you're there, if you have a question that you'd like to ask the panel.
Yes.
If you're there, go ahead and unmute. And
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, please.
Thank
This
you.
is Jim Vallette from Vancouver, BC.
Hi. One of the questions I have is, and one of my practices, I've done a lot of work with men's work over the years, is the shadow side of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and particularly the masculine. And Fabrizio started that talking about the anger. I certainly have dealt with anger issues myself, but I'm just curious because that seems to be a lot. What's come up in our culture is the shadow side of the masculine. That's my question.
Very important question. Who would like to take it on? I would invite John, for maybe you to start just with what happens with anger in the Vajrayana tradition of transmuting it into clarity and wisdom, if I'm not mistaken. If you're open to just launch there, just as a beginning point.
Well, okay. You named it, Will. Yeah, in the Vajrayana tradition, we see anger as the confused aspect of clarity, insight, and wisdom. And so if I experience anger arising in me, my job is to sit with it and hold it compassionately until I can arrive at what the clarity it's trying to bring me is, and then expressing that rather than the anger itself. That's what I try to do myself and what I try to help my clients in therapy do. And I want to try to answer both this most recent question and the last one, because I wanted to say that a very practical way for me that I try to live the divine masculine and to balance with the feminine is through play. Play and dancing and singing. I finished a workshop on Afro-Brazilian dance recently, and that was so enlivening, and I felt the joy and spontaneity and the desire to connect and love and be seen and see in such a healthy, beautiful way through play and dance. And then the shadow, I think, yeah, that question I think is profoundly important, because especially for, as Will talked about the evolution through growth and embracing mature masculinity, I think shadow often winds up being the ungrown up parts of ourselves, which I like Ticha, Masai, I think you said earlier about like not being a master of this. I very much see the ways I am not grown up emotionally and otherwise, and I see that as shadow, and that is the core of my work in my own therapy that I do, and in my own work, working with the gender equity and holding those spaces, is to continue to mature and grow through the shadow and through interactions and lovingly listening to others as a mirror for my own growth.
That's beautiful. Anyone else? Any perspective on how do we address and transmute the shadow? Well, what is the shadow side of the divine masculine, and how do we transmute it or embrace it or work with it?
Will, should I come in? I would say that, I've had an experience where the spiritual practice teaches you the balance for sure. But there are moments in life when you're faced with a brutal truth, where you have to. I remember the case of a friend where the psychiatrist gave fake certification to this friend. And I was at rage in that meeting. And the method was very simple, that I went into prayer and said, Divine, you guide me how to go about it. And I must tell you, the conversation that I had and the question that I raised was said in a very humorous way. Well, the person got the message. And the person called the meeting, he said, Indu, bravo, you did the right thing. You spoke the truth, but you spoke it in a manner that enlightened everybody. So it's like, you lift yourself when you give up your limitations. And for that lifting up, I think surely there is a divine shower, which is always available for you. The only thing is, if you're able to call those powers in us. Thank you.
That's beautiful. So you found a skillful way to speak an uncomfortable truth that could then be received, it sounds like.
Yes.
So a couple more responses on this, and then we have another question from Julian Devereaux, which we'll get to. But any other reflections on this around the shadow? And
Can I just chime
Please.
in with some
Please,
cultural
Masai.
wisdom?
Yeah, go ahead.
I go ahead? Sorry. Okay.
Yes, Masai, please.
I find it very important to incorporate our cultural practices and wisdoms that we get from our culture. And in my culture, there is a very simple proverb that we say, I'll say it in my language to get the concept before I say it in English, and then there is no translation for this on Google. It is Inye namote mama kipi, inye na kipi mama mot. So it's like, what is the pot without the water, and what is the water without the pot? So the divine masculine, in the dance between the divine masculine, the beauty for me, I would say, comes in the shades and the shadows. That is where the wisdoms and the questions would arise that would bring us to the wisdoms that we need. So every time when the shadow was mentioned, I got very excited about it, because as an artist, I see an image. Without the shades and the shadows, there is no depth in it. So it is that brings us into question and concerns and compassion to bring about the depth in the masculine together with the feminine. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful, and so beautifully articulated. Well, if you have further thoughts on that question, you might weave it into the next question. But Julian, I'd like to give a space for your question to come forward.
Thank you. And I think I just want to express appreciation for this conversation, because I think the antidote to the shadow that we're seeing so clearly expressed in our culture is this very thing of having a conversation and defining and developing a language to talk about the divine masculine and not just the toxic masculine. And it seems to help me balance it when I look at both the positive and negative. And then the other issue that my question really had to do with integrating the masculine and feminine within myself. I'm sort of envious of Ignacio and some of my two-spirited friends that already have that experience. I find myself sort of running from one to the seesaw to the other, trying to find balance between the two, and I seem to still be kind of jerking from one to the other without a very nimble ability. So if anybody wants to speak to how to integrate those, the cerebral colossum in the brain is bigger in women than it is men, and they can switch from left to right quicker. So thanks.
Thank you, Julian. Any reflections on that? I'll just say that I think our culture does not allow us to explore the full nature of even the male psyche, the masculine psyche, the full vastness and richness, and its interrelationship, interreceptivity, and interpenetration with the feminine psyche. So we are incredibly limited and boxed in, and then take that box for the whole. That's what the culture tries to sell us, is the man box is the whole story of being a man. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So that's part of how I understand what you're saying, Julian, because I experience it in myself. And I want to really appreciate what John said about play and dance. I remember Angie Arian, who some of you may know, a cross-cultural anthropologist who's a friend and mentor years back. And she said there were 4 fundamental practices common to all human cultures across the globe, and they were silence, storytelling, singing, and dancing. And, you know, our culture has a fairly challenged relationship with those in a certain way. Reclaiming singing and dancing as a healing modality and as a pathway to ecstasy that takes us into the fundamental joy of being alive, I think is something foundational that is still underestimated in our Western civilization. Anyway, I'll stop there. Those are some thoughts. I want to invite anyone else to reflect on these questions.
Actually, what I wanted to say is I go to a lot to the theater. I'm an actor too, and I'm in plays. And it's usually when you see the public in there, it's mainly women and gay people.
Interesting.
And I find out that men do not want to play in a way of being having being an audience of something that's going on there, something new where you have to feel like that's going on and starting all over, no? It's something new for you. But men do not go to the theater, for example. We are not proud of having the experience of playing. Something that I noticed on that theme.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for that. Thank you. I wondered, Sam, if I might just invite you forward to speak about the imaginal, practices of the imaginal that can help liberate and strengthen and enhance, you know, the male experience of the divine masculine.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that comes, it's interesting the themes that are weaving here, how anger is coming up and play. You know, just kind of hat tip to John. You know, I've been introduced to some practice with Yamantaka. You know, who's this wrathful manifestation. You know, many armed kind of buffalo figure making, almost like the haka face. You know, that they have in New Zealand, and there's a lot of energy that comes from that, but also like seeing through that as seeing through Yamantaka and seeing Manjushri with, you know, the deity with the flaming sword that can kind of cut through delusion. When something comes up that, you know, triggers a lot of anger and I'm contracted around it and fixated on it, usually bringing forth that image of Yamantaka and really allowing that wrathful or that rageful energy to build, but then seeing through Yamantaka and just kind of cutting ties with whatever it is I'm contracted around and just feeling the pure energy of that rageful energy moving through. One thing that's coming up, how play is coming in here, actually, there's in neuroscience, there's this thing called the affect streams, and the contracted mode of a certain kind of circuit that we have in ourselves is rage. Its expanded mode is play. So there's actually, you can see a continuity between rage and play. So that's what's coming, you know, it's kind of in the field here. You know, when we liberate that pure energy, it's free energy to play. And the last thing I'll say is that really the awakened mode of that in this model is wu wei. So it's just effortless action, you know. So yeah, I guess that's one way of working with a kind of divine masculine shadow of rage or anger, however that shows up. Experience. Maybe I'll put it there.
Yeah, and that wu wei is really similar to being used as an instrument in a certain way, or being used. There's something larger that you are simply at the effect of, and so it moves through you effortlessly. And then your actions are flawless because it's not your actions. Yeah, which relates to what you were saying in the very beginning, Luke, that beautiful invocation of the prayer from Hanuman, you know, that, you know, if I don't remember, if I don't know who I am, then I serve the divine. If I know who I am the divine. And of course, that could be a statement of extreme hubris, but it's also the experience of the greatest mystics across all of the spiritual traditions. So lots of paradox and potential there. So we have about 3 more minutes before we're going to kind of bring this formal part to a close. And then we'll have a couple of announcements and we'll bring it to a close at our time at 75 minutes. However, we just want those of you who would like to stay on, that we will stay on afterwards for those who want to ask questions. But at this moment, I just want to invite a final reflection from any of our panelists, anything that feels important or that you haven't been able to yet share, just to speak to briefly.
Yeah, I also wanted to offer time, but I just felt like a really big thing still on my heart after this amazing sharings of you. So with regards to the shadow, we are practicing in this pilgrimage. We are working with the lunar cycle, and every single day we train ourselves in a virtue and a shadow quality that is the other side of the coin. And that is really actually the response also to this question of how do we create balance between the feminine and the masculine. It is what we experiencing through creating habits which are the creative structures that allow us to actually face the shadow that is blocking the sun to shine through. And it's every single day as the moon grows and decreases that we are looking at one shadow and we are really honest with it. How does that work out in our life? And then what comes out is oftentimes actually this process that we just talked about, which is frustration or anger, and that's just stored up energy in our bodies. And when we now as men, especially as men, do what we have done throughout history, which is moving our bodies, working out, or sometimes screaming even, in going into nature and scream, then we alchemize and transmute this energy into this playfulness that allows us to actually embody and understand the virtue through the playfulness and the silence. And I think that's also a transition we as a whole species go through from this current Kali Yuga, or age of separation and disconnection and fragmentation, into Satya Yuga, which is the time of unity consciousness, and really feeling, wow, we are from the same spirit and we share the same breath together.
That is beautiful, Luke. And my sort of charge to you is to carry that into the political spheres of influence so that that rage can be transmuted into play at that level. I'm sort of teasing, but I'm also praying for that. I mean, that rage could be worked with more skillfully in the transformation from the shadow masculine to the fully integrated, healed and healthy masculine, and in balance with the feminine at all levels. Maybe we'll just open it up. If there are any questions, any further questions that anyone would like to ask, they could be directed to any of the panelists or to the panel as a whole. So the floor is open for anyone who might have a question or a reflection. Maybe we'll start with Annette, and then we'll come back to Julian and then to Chester. Annette.
Hi, thank you. This is really, really rich and wonderful to hear these various perspectives across cultures, and really beautiful. And as I was listening, I was really struck, especially from Ticha, about the proverb in Kenya about sort of that balancing and the need for the shadow also to bring out the more divine aspects. And there's a similar proverb within the Yoruba tradition. I'm thinking about many indigenous cultures, how there isn't a shunning and a pushing away that happens so much within the Judeo-Christian framework, that, you know, there's this dichotomy, this division, good and evil. And but there is truly how the integration or the cleansing or the healing, however you want to call it, of the toxicity brings forward sort of what's divine. And it's just like, yeah, like the sun, you have the sunshine, but the sun reflects the shadow in a sense. And sort of I don't want to say the need for both, but how the shadow can actually support the development and the bringing forward of what's divine. So that's just sort of what's going through my mind as everyone was speaking, all the men were speaking. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's beautiful reflection, Annette. Yeah, Julian?
Yeah, you can hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So right before the discussion ended, you were talking about bringing the play into the political arena, and then it had a recollection or a realization that what I played at when I was a boy in Texas, we played at war. We played war. So maybe what has to happen is a different kind of play. And I'm sure that's probably not as prevalent now, but we were busy shooting each other, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's very true. Thank you for that reflection. How can we play at play instead of play at war? Thank you, Julian. Chester.
Thank you for everyone's contributions. I was also just reflecting or reminded on that idea of play, on the types of play that we do and the types of play that we encourage in boys, and that sort of but then the image of dance and sort of this idea of like someone reflected, one of the panelists reflected on this, the masculine being that energy, that impetus, that action sort of thing. And so I was thinking about this idea of like dance and flow was the one thing, is like, how do we get the action going without it being too traumatizing in a lot of ways? And so, what the previous, who spoke before me, I was just saying, like the types of play that we do, like how even for men, what do we play? Hard hitting things. And when we break it down, there's actually, you talk to people who play basketball, play football, there's a science, there's an art to it. There's a flow, there's a gentleness to it that you have to have, an intelligence. And I was just reflecting on that sort of like that dance is the flow of not only the feminine, but just this whole, how sometimes you need to be hard, but sometimes you need to be soft. And being able to, one of the panelists reflected on that anger, being able to pause, reflect, what is needed here? Is it an open hand, or is it a closed fist? And that flow and that sort of ability to dance with that idea, at least, is something I was just it popped into my head, Richard. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful, Chester. A beautiful description of what we're reaching for, that kind of fluidity of the play of opposites in a skillful dance. Gail Warner, lovely to see you here, Gail. Please.
Unmute myself here. Good to see you, Will and Cynthia and Garrett and everybody. It's very, very moving to me to be here. I guess what I'm thinking is about young people. I'm a retired therapist, and for the last 2 years, I've been working with my grandson and a couple other of his friends on observational awareness. And we meet once a month and we share. Mostly I share a little truth, and then we do reflection. So it's really 45 minutes of asking questions and they're responding. And as I'm listening to all of this, I'm thinking, kids have all of it. It's like this is in them. And it's like, how do we give them opportunity to have the expression that isn't just an ego ladder of accomplishment or achievement or whatever? And so it's both, this is inspiring to me and challenging. And then also for boys, because I'm working with boys, it's just becoming so much I guess what I want to say, it's a crisis. It's like they need this support so much. So I'm just curious about any, I mean, obviously we can't talk about it here, but I'd love to know more ideas from people of how to implement more of this for particularly young men, but also just young people, teenage people, even younger. You know, there's such a presence within them if they're given the space to be heard.
Yeah, it's a very important point you're raising, Gail. And I'll just say a beautiful quote from Bell Hooks. I'm paraphrasing, that boys and young men are forced to self-mutilate part of their own humanity. And if they don't do it to themselves, their peers do it to them. So there's a very narrow process, a very restrictive, almost a partially dehumanizing process in the standard socialization of boys and men. And so how can we, correct that, and obviously working with play skillfully and working with these proper mentoring of boys and men. And there are various projects that are trying to do it. The Mankind Project, that Promundo, various men's organizations, a call to men, they're all recognizing there's a real crisis in manhood. It's particularly poignant as the boys come of age into young men, and they need much better mentoring than they're getting. So this is definitely a part of the work that's needed. Thank you for naming that. Cynthia.
Thank you, my love, for calling on me.
You're happy. I move, right?
I just want to uplift the work of Chrysalis Academy in South Africa, too, for the work they do with men. And I'm sure, Gail, if you'd like to talk with Lucille, who's here on this call, she would probably most definitely call. I see her shaking her head. So, and Lucille, you may have something to say here about what's being asked, too. I just want to say how touched I was, Sam, by what you were saying about well, all of you, about the shadow side, about the dichotomy there, the polar opposites, and yet the coming together of both play and anger. And I'm curious with the men on the panel, but also I also know we have other men here that are part of our work, and some who are new people here, but I'm seeing Ugo out there, for example, who might want to respond to this. Around when was play, my sense is that play was not allowed at some point in your life. You had to grow up. And I think that's different for women or girls, if we talk in the binary here of boys and girls. But somehow I think that was trained out of boys at some point, that you had to grow up. And I'm curious if any of you have a particular moment or story of when that happened for you, if I'm correct in saying that. Even girls have other things that are trained out of them. And I do want to highlight the non-binary and trans communities that actually are doing some of this work that we talk about getting, it's like doing the healing work within those identities that haven't been allowed for many of us. So any response there around when it might have been trained out of you, if I'm even correct? I'm just thinking about my own brother, who I think had that experience. I haven't talked to him about it, but I imagine he had. Marco, I see you're unmuting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I get the question. I think when I start to be a teenager, the games change or switch to something more aggressive or to something more competitive, where you have to rule. So everything is you can play, but everything is leading you for competition, to lead, to win over someone else. That's all of the games you have. There are no games that are just for entertainment or for relaxing or for having fun or for expressing different things. So all of the games are addressed to make the man feel you can win, you can rule, you can have power over others or compete. That's it. That's all of the fun you can have is limited to that.
Yeah, and I see, thank you, Marco, and I see Hugo's hand up. I'm going to add to this, and maybe you can speak to it, Hugo, because I think there's a severing of the divine part of any one of us when those things happen. So when we're told to fit into a box or be more aggressive or whatever, there's a severing that happens for our connection to something greater than ourselves. Yeah, Hugo.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia, and thank you everyone for your sharing today. Amazing. Yeah, so some of my memories as a young boy was to the parameters were very strict, and I would use even the word not that was taking out, but beaten out of me. I remember one time I'm checking my mother's drawer, and in her chest in her room when she had all the jewelry, and I'm pulling some jewelry. I'm fascinated with some stones and shiny things. I'm 5 years old, 6 years old, I don't know. So, and I put some, I'm not even like, it's completely innocent, just the beauty and newness of this. And I'm wearing some of my mother's jewelry, and I got a good beating from my father. Said, you don't ever do that again. You have to be a man. And this was not soft beating. This was a belt on my legs. The marks will stay there for days. And in that severity, in many ways, if I'm crying, or if I was crying for something, then I would get beat up for crying. So now I can cry for real, because men don't cry, of course. So it's a unrooting of the feminine touch that it becomes an alien by the time that some of us men are 12 or 14 years old, and so strongly indoctrinated in this patriarchal machismo.
Very powerful, Hugo. Very powerful. Thank you for bringing that story forward. And yeah. Mark Oben, please.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for an amazing conversation tonight. And I think one that is well needed. And things that have just come up for me is this almost killing of creativity and imagination as a child, and how as a young boy you kind of steered away from anything creative or the arts, or boys don't do ballet and that kind of thing. So that kind of siphons and puts a lid on the creative ability, and starts to let the imagination basically die away. And creation is the divine to me. So that's that's where I think part of the paradox you were talking about earlier comes into play.
That's beautiful, Mark. Very true. Thank you for that. We do have Arturo, please.
Thank you. My question is just very direct to Hugo. I am curious what, if you can tell us in brief, and if you're willing to, what has been your journey from that experience as a young boy and through being a young man and on that, you now find yourself in a gathering like this, and I'm sure other places as well. Just because I think these stories are important for men to hear. How we have extricated ourselves from that sort of, intense box of masculinity. So,
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, I'll be happy to. So if I describe my journey very quickly, it was too lonely for too long. and specifically because I didn't feel like I belong with the other men in my family growing up. The way they were talking about women or people in general, what they were doing, and men are outside in a family gathering, are outside drinking alcohol and smoking, and the women are inside doing things to cater for them. So in my child mind, I was never, I don't want to be like them. I'd rather be with the women. I I am not a woman and I'm a heterosexual man, but I'm more comfortable with women than with men growing up. And all up to almost my 40s, I had no male friends because I wasn't comfortable. So I always gravitated towards the women. They were saying, and this is my experience. Okay, I'm talking about my family here. Everybody has their experience, but the women in my family, it was more appealing to me to establish conversation with them. I thought there were more deeper, intellectual, interesting things to talk about. But it created in me that sense of loneliness and not belonging. I don't belong in the men's group. Um, I I am welcome in the women's group, but I want to be with other men, not just those men. And it was so hard for me to figure that it's impossible as a child to figure out that I want something other than this. I don't know what it is because I never experienced it, I never seen it in my life. So it was a struggle. It was a struggle, and sooner or later, that indoctrination ends up becoming part of a young man. Or for me, I became some of that what I disliked from my father, what I disliked from my uncles, and I did it without even realizing that I even had a choice because I didn't have any role model to follow. So until much later in my life. I hope that answers at least part of your question.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah, thank you, Hugo. That's very beautifully and kind of intricately articulated, but it's a process that many men go through. And as you say, they don't even realize they have a choice. And at some point, they lose awareness of that whole process having even happened. So they actually believe they are the man, that they are the product of that conditioning. They think that's who I am. And they don't realize that who they've become is actually a consequence of that whole process of conditioning that hasn't been sufficiently unraveled enough. And it's through no fault of their own. I mean, it's just the whole culture does a cover up on its own pathologization of the people, right? So, Sam, you had your hand up a while ago. I wondered if you still had a question or reflection or a comment to make.
Thanks. Well, I don't recall actually. I can
okay.
yield to the group. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you do, please feel free, and we'll go to Jim, who has his hand up again. Jim.
I want to really underline if the man or the boy, as you said, Will, doesn't do it, his peers will take it out on him. And I certainly, I can reflect on and see that I took in things and came to that later in life. But where I really saw it was with my son, because I'd raised him with more expansive ideas around this and that. And then when he hit the peer group time, it just shut down. And so I just, so that to me says this is really a social change, a culture-wide, social-wide change to get enough examples out there to get belonging. And I really relate to Hugo wanting to belong. And the men's work for me was a place where I could belong and have myself be expressed, sharing poetry and, while marching. And so anyways, that's my reflection. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Jim, especially with even as a parent, you're speaking to the powerlessness of a parent on their own to change everything, even if they model something very differently. When the child goes out, or the young person goes out into the world, they get that conditioning, and it's just part of the challenge, part of the crisis, really. Indu. Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Indu.
Will. Yeah, yeah. Quickly to share here, Will. I think from the point that Ugo was sharing, I want to just bring in here that I think yes. I also received one beating by my father when I was young because I had committed I think a mischief. Then after that, of course, he hugged me and told me, that son, never do like this and all that. I got it. I remember, I think some of our teachers used to beat us in India because that was a very common thing, that to discipline a child, if you don't answer the questions rightly in mathematics and all that, you are beaten, you are made fun of and all that. One thing which I realized, Will, was that I knew one thing in life, that I didn't want to be like those teachers. And so what the way it transformed me was that I knew what was wrong, what hurt me. And when I have the power, I will not do what I suffered. And that's the reason why, if suppose my son, who is not 30, used as a child, did some mischief, I would talk to him. Because I knew hitting him would be violence, not good at all. And at times he would say, when I used to say, how do I tell you that you listen? He said, you give me a slap. I said, no, I'll not do that. I can't do that because I suffered. I don't want to suffer. And I can tell you, Will, much of our growing up was actually a humbling exercise that what I suffered, I'll not make others suffer. So I think it's also like, how few things, and when I teach gender equality in the classes and all, I think I surely make it a point that, one is not ruthless, one listens to students, one listens to young people, and never repeat what you suffered. Give up. That's very important, I would say.
It's the golden rule, right?
Yes.
Which a form of which is found in all spiritual traditions. Yeah. So Des.
Yes, thank you, Will. Thank you, everyone. I have 4 brothers, and recently my eldest brother passed on 1st of August. Thank you so much for this rich conversation. My heart is full. Lots of thoughts sitting with me about how they are doing, and what is within them. So deep appreciation for the conversation and for the contributions and so on. I need to leave. I just wanted to say thank you. Be well, take care, and see you on the 13th of December. Take care, everybody. Lots of love.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Desiree. And yes, we do encourage you all to join us for the Jerry Gala on December 13th, which is the entire global Jerry community coming together.
I think just something else briefly that's been kind of with me is, this question about the kind of the shadow, and we've spoken to the kind of anger dimension of it. And I think one of the ways it's shown up for me a little bit differently is, it's so easy to see the kind of wounded or pathological expression of masculinity in the world and culture. And I think part of in my journey, my reaction to that was so much to be, well, I'm not going to be that. But in that process, kind of rejecting masculinity itself as something that I didn't want to be. And in that, I think there is some element of vitality and strength that I kind of cast out as part of that kind of pathological part. And so I think part of my own kind of experience has been re-welcoming a kind of masculine energy to myself and finding a way to inhabit and allow and stand in that in a way that feels aligned and right and all of that. But yeah, that's been a part of this for me, and I think it's another side of the kind of shadow that can come, and something that is important to to name as and invite back in as part of being a full and alive and vibrant and powerful and compassionate and loving and all of that human being. So
Beautiful. So true.
Thank you, Garrett. Well, can I go? Can I join?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, Patsy, Cape Town. Something that Garrett named just like woke something up for me. We had a conversation in the breakout room, and yeah, my relationship with gender has always been embattled as a trans woman growing up, and so it was always fight. It was embattled. It was fraught with difficulties and with trauma and with finding yourself. And through my journey into my womanhood, it for me, Garrett, in the same kind of way, but maybe more painful. I thought that getting into the fullness of my womanhood or my womanity, it meant a kind of rejection, a kind of denial and a suppression of masculine, not just masculine expression, but almost like any masculine embodiment. I felt that I needed to reject and oppress that because I'm a woman now. And so it also meant that I flowed more into being more submissive and being softer, and it has not really served me in any way. And how it came to its full extent and to its full trauma was in a relationship that I had with a man who really required me to be performatively woman. And that meant that I should be submissive. I should speak when spoken to. I should walk one step on the left-hand side behind him. I should not reply when he argues. I should not have opinions of my own. I could not show any sign of assertiveness because that is aggression. I need to lay down so that he can guide and live inside my life. And he said he needed and required that because he does not want to be in a relationship with a man. So for me, it meant that self-sacrificing and the self-abandonment of any inclination I had towards the preservation of my own meanness, my divinity, and my authority, that I needed to lay it down for him so that his masculinity is able to find a soft landing spot inside my life and inside my love. And if I couldn't provide that for him, then he would feel he's in a relationship with a man, which triggered me because he's in that moment calling me a man. And so even more so, I rejected the masculine traits. We call it traits, but Hugo, I know we're not talking about traits when we're talking about divine masculinity. But so I needed to performatively do those things that people think are of a woman. And I lost everything. I lost my identity, my understanding of self, my power, because I relinquished everything so that I can play woman for a man. And so this is why, finding the balance between masculine and feminine is not a nice thing, it's essential. I lost everything because I couldn't call upon my assertiveness. I couldn't call upon my decision-making power. I couldn't call upon my autonomy. And so it was toxic and it was so disempowering. And so this is why the union and the balance between the two has been so important for me to reach. In that if I do show assertiveness and power and authority, of which I have so much, doesn't mean I'm a man. It is just I needed to make peace So the fact that everything is me and my embodiment and the union between how these two have met, even though through trauma, is now coexisting in a way that is so healthy and beautiful for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. That's incredibly powerful and so beautifully spoken. And it shows, at least to me, one aspect of it is how impoverished these rigid categories of gender identity are, masculine and feminine. It's so narrow because each of us is all of it. And ultimately, if we come into our full, healthy human expression, we become an exquisite dance between those two different aspects of our nature in a beautiful unfolding spectrum. And actually what happens then is it births a whole new you, because, you know, when the masculine and feminine get together, birth happens. But I'm just thinking of, just to summarize that, all of that, by a quotation about the great Catholic saint, Teresa of Avila. And I think this is true for many mystics of either gender. But it was said of her, and she was very feminine in her young womanhood, and was kind of enjoying the whole dance as a young woman with men. And she then, of course, she went into the convent. But it was said of her that men encountered in St. Teresa a woman who was more of a man than they were, while also being fully a woman. And I love that quote because it wasn't really that she was trying to be more of a man, or she was simply someone who had evolved to the pinnacle of her human self fully and without limitation. And therefore she was able to be like a man, and she could able to be fully a woman because she was both, because both are in her and both are in each of us. So anyway, that's just my little take on that. But I appreciate so much what you shared. Thank you, Patsy.
I think we need to bring our time together to a close. I know we could go on and on and on. Thank you all for sharing. Are you ready for that, Will?
I am. I was thinking about maybe I should close, but then these rich pieces, I'm glad we didn't miss any of them. I just thank, all of you for joining us. One thing I meant to congratulate the panelists on was how incredibly well they did on timing, how rarely we had to ring the bell. That is not usually the case. And it's fine that it's not usually the case, but it was really beautiful the way people really were succinct, and it made for a lot of richness in terms of the interaction. So, and it's just great to see each of you and to have this conversation. And Luke, blessings to you there in Italy and your ritual pilgrimage journey. And Ignacio, I'm just so appreciative. Ugo, what you brought in, Indu, Garrett and Masai, and all of you. And it's great to see you, Sharna and Arturo and John and Millie. Thank you all for joining us. It's such a joy.
Why don't we unmute and say goodbye? And we'll see you next month, if not sooner.
See you.
Thank you for this wonderful session.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.